Well, we're joined now by the Environment Secretary George Eustice. George Eustice, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We just had a story there of, and I don't think you heard it, but this is a British person who came in from South Africa via Doha and had no checks on arrival whatsoever and has obviously gone through the airport, come out in 10 minutes. This is appalling. What is going on? Why? We thought that South Africa in particular, anyone flying in from there, that there was now strict border control.
Well, look, everybody flying in from anywhere in the world now needs to have a test prior to travel. And there are strict penalties on carriers if they fail to enforce that. So they check that people have had a test and have tested clear before they can travel. And then obviously on arrival, at the moment, we're asking everybody from everywhere in the world to quarantine for an initial period of 10 days when they arrive. And we're also about to introduce a policy from next Monday so that those high-risk countries, including South Africa,
as we've just said to you, someone's come in from South Africa. Nobody checked on her arrival at the UK anything.
They didn't check her test result. They didn't check her passenger locator form.
How can this still be happening, particularly from people who are coming from South Africa? It makes zero sense.
I'm sure that officials in the Department for Transport will look at that particular issue. I know it's been covered in the newspapers today. I mean, what should happen is when people arrive, they should have a form that nominates where they're going to quarantine and gives that address so that we have that on record. That is supposed to happen at the point at which they arrive.
Mr. Eustice, with respect to you, it's just not happening. We've just literally heard from the horse's mouth. Someone who's just come in who just sailed through. I want to play you a clip from our interview yesterday with one of your colleagues, the Health Minister, Mr. Agar, who I asked him what I thought was a pretty straightforward question, given it's on his watch and it's their #1 lead system for controlling the border, which is about this issue of hotel quarantine. I simply asked him, have we done any deals with any hotels for the quarantine that you say is coming in on Monday? Here's what he said. Right, but how many hotels right now do you have signed off and ready to go to accept the enforced quarantine?
I don't have the latest figure on the number that we've currently signed up.
I read yesterday there aren't any. How many hotels do we have signed up ready to accept enforced quarantine? You don't know the number, but do you know if we have any?
I answered the question saying I do not know the answer to that question.
Do you know if we have any?
That's an honest answer to you.
Do you know if we have any? You're the health...
I do not know how many hotels have been signed up in the course of contract negotiations.
You're the health minister. Wouldn't it be an absolute priority that you would know that information? OK, so the health minister had no idea whether we'd even signed up one hotel. You're not the health minister, but can you answer for him? Do you know how many hotels we've signed up as we're speaking now for quarantine coming in on Monday?
Well, look, this policy was announced last week and discussions between officials in the Department for Health and some of the hotel operators started last Thursday, I understand. Those discussions are still ongoing. They've not yet concluded. So we're not in a position to say, you know, which hotels are signed up and which aren't.
So you haven't signed any up, is that the answer?
My understanding is they're talking to a number of the hotel groups to try to get an agreement.
Have you signed a single hotel?
Well, they're confident we'll have this capacity in place for Monday, but at the moment there's discussions taking place. They've been taking place since Thursday.
Right, but sorry, Mr. Eustice, sorry to be pedantic, but we're now day 2 of this question. Have we, as you and I are talking now, have we signed up a single hotel for the quarantine coming in on Monday?
Well, it's not about signing up single individual hotels one at a time. They're in discussion with some of the groups. And
have you signed any hotel chains? Anybody? Has anybody signed up?
Well, at the moment, my understanding is no, but those discussions are still ongoing. That's why. And of course,
so we are 6 days away. Why have you only started it Thursday?
We'll have the capacity in place that we need for next Monday.
Mr. Eustice, how long have you known about the South African strain?
Well, the South African strain first emerged at the end of December. Since then, we've taken a number of measures to strengthen our approach to the border, including pre-travel testing.
Sorry, look, I may be stupid here. I have to reach that conclusion that maybe I'm the stupid one. Why has it taken 6-7 weeks to even start a conversation with hotel chains, given there was this new strain from South Africa which was causing huge concern, and given that the very enforced quarantine we're doing has been happening in other countries around the world for months and months and months? Why have you left it so late?
Well, because when the South African strain and other strains started to emerge at the end of December, we took immediate action to require pre-travel testing, which is a proportionate approach at that point. We then subsequently introduced a requirement for quarantine for everybody arriving. We've removed some of the exemptions from quarantine a couple of weeks ago. And last week, we announced a further change to the policy, which was to quarantine those from high-risk countries in hotels.
But right now, we've got
people
people coming in from high-risk countries like South Africa, in fact, particularly South Africa, without any checks when they get to our border whatsoever. Damning piece in the Daily Mail today. We haven't signed up a single hotel for the quarantine that's supposed to come in 6 days' time, and God knows how many people would have flown in by then anyway. I mean, throughout this pandemic, it just seems to the average person in the street, there's been zero control of the border that makes any sense.
George Eustice, a question I put to your colleague yesterday was what percentage of people coming in are adhering to the self-isolation quarantine currently? What is the answer to that?
Well, of course, we don't know fully, but they do checks on some of them. So there are some checks that take place at the address where people give. I think it's fair to say that because we can't know for sure whether people are abiding by the quarantine that we're asking them to do, it's right that we look at further measures. And that's why we are considering, for instance, requirements for people to undergo tests while they are in quarantine.
Mr. Eustice, I'm sorry, it's all just so late.
If you're not checking people's passenger locator forms, as we know from this piece in the Daily Express this morning, how can you possibly check whether people are adhering to quarantine?
Well, they should be checking those passenger locator forms. They should be submitted so that we have data on where everybody is self-isolating and in quarantine. So that information should be provided. As I said, I'm sure...
You don't have a clue, do you, as a government, how many people are adhering to quarantine? We don't know if anybody is.
Well, the only way you would know for sure is to do 100% checks on everyone. We've decided not to do that, and in common with many of the things that we have to do in fighting this virus, you need people to work with us as we try to fight the pandemic. But we have taken the view that with those higher risk countries like South Africa and South America, we will require quarantine in hotels where we can more...
We just haven't got any hotels, and right now people are still wandering in from South Africa with no checks, which is just breathtaking. Let me just ask you, we had a debate before you came on about whether criminals like Gary Glitter, sex offenders, rapists, murderers, should be getting the vaccine, as we understand Mr. Glitter has had, before people like shop workers or health and care workers or prison officers or police officers. What is your view?
Well, my view on this is that we've got an approach set out by the Joint Committee on Vaccinations, which is to target the most vulnerable cohorts, that is, those most at risk of dying from contracting the virus. That's why we've been focusing first on the over 85s, now on those over 70s. We've made great progress on that. And I think it's wrong to get into a position of saying, well, if someone's committed a crime, they shouldn't get the vaccine. That's not how we do it. If someone's committed a crime, they're put in prison and they do their time in prison.
You're prioritising health workers. Why are you not prioritising supermarket workers over convicted paedophiles?
Well, when it comes to health workers, obviously there's a very clear difference in that they are working day in, day out with people suffering from the coronavirus. So they're in direct contact with it. Shop workers are potentially
facing people with coronavirus all day long, certainly far more exposed to it than someone like Gary Glitter, who could be put into an isolated cell if need be.
Look, the point is that those in the NHS, I think for reasons everybody on your programme will understand, are in daily contact with the virus. That's why they should get the vaccine early. Thereafter, the view is that we should focus on the vulnerable cohorts first, because the way we'll tackle this pandemic is by basically reducing the mortality, reducing the hospital admissions. If we can get to the point that we've vaccinated everyone over the age of 70, that accounts for some 85% of mortality at the moment, and then you really start to deal with this virus.
I just think it sticks in my gullet to categorise someone like Gary Glitter as a vulnerable cohort. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, George Eustice. We appreciate it.